So I've been playing spy fiction. Now, quite a while ago, I reviewed a game called Extermination, which was one of the first games Hidetaka Suehiro, aka Swery, aka the guy what made Deadly Premonition, worked on. However, it wasn't really the type of game you might expect coming from either DP or D4. I mean, the game was alright, and I definitely have a soft spot for survival horror games, so it certainly had that going for it. But it wasn't quite as creative, scenario and character-wise as D4 and Deadly Premonition. The reason for that was most likely because it was made before Swery and his team worked under Axis Games. So I'd say the chance was pretty big that he had nowhere near the creative freedom he has today. But Spy Fiction, on the other hand, is a game written and directed by Swery while already working under Axis Games. And even though I've never actually heard anyone ever bring this game up anywhere ever, this could potentially be a hidden gem. Now, according to Wikipedia, the game wasn't exactly received well by critics. It was panned for having shitty controls, bad writing, and poor AI. But after doing some of my own research, I found that quite a few people actually liked the game a fair bit. Sure, the game wasn't perfect, but it had a certain charm to it, which apparently appealed to a lot of people. Which sounds a suspicious amount like another game that Swery made. I wonder which it could be. Also, the things that sound a suspicious amount like other games don't stop there. I mean, right off the bat, the game looks and sounds exactly like Extermination, and as soon as the UI appeared, I was confronted with the exact same font used in Metal Gear Solid 2. Now, it has been stated that Swery was indeed inspired by Metal Gear, and he's certainly shown his appreciation for cutscenes in his later games as well. Of course, he had nowhere near the budget that Kojima had, so the game ended up looking like a low-budget remake of MGS2.
Listen closely, Alice. I don't have time to explain. The CIA is ready to send in F-117s to destroy this place.
Now, just as in Extermination, you are part of an elite military group thing, this time called Phantom Unit. Phantom Unit is going after Dietrich Troy, some Nazi-looking Aryan fuck who just so happens to have a biochemical weapon called Lauder. You play as either Billy Bishop or Sheila Crawford, both of which have no personality whatsoever. Well, other than that Billy apparently isn't into cross-dressing. Now, of course, with this game being inspired by Metal Gear Solid, it'll have a whole bunch of unexpected plot twists of its own. Although, because the game so openly touts its inspiration taken from MGS, it might be a wee bit lacking in the unexpected department. But despite that, the story is actually kind of enjoyable. I mean, it isn't good as in like the traditional sense of the word good, but good in the same way Deadly Premonition is good. So it's not quite so bad that it's good, but more like so awkward that it's endearing. I liked it a lot actually, and it's quite fun to see a game with so many straight-faced pretensions end up being this silly. And not only that, but the plot even ties into Deadly Premonition a little, which was pretty fucking amazing. That said, despite the connection with DP, it's not quite as funny. I mean, Deadly Premonition definitely had a sense of self-aware lightheartedness about it, and Spy Fiction certainly doesn't. Still, that didn't stop me from laughing at the bad guys in their cartoony German accents.
Oh, poor baby.
Anyway, gameplay-wise, it's, well, not great, but certainly far from horrible. Now, being that it's inspired by MGS, it is of course a stealth game, Or, well, it's more like it's presented as a stealth game because it's actually just an action-adventure game. And I guess you could make the same argument about the MGS games. I mean, after all, fighting robots and riding motorcycles isn't exactly stealthy. But MGS still has a lot of methodical, slow-paced sneaking around going on. This game has none of that. And what it does have is definitely a lot more arcadey than the already quite arcadey MGS games. I mean, you do get all the typical stealth things like crouching, leaning up against walls, CQC, and you can even turn invisible when you stay pressed up against a wall for a certain amount of time. The only issue is that unlike Metal Gear, getting spotted doesn't really have too much of a consequence, as you're usually able to just shoot an enemy no problem and be on your merry way, since the guards are about as intelligent as Darkside Phil.
How's my M9 bullet full? I don't have an M9. What the fuck? What? I don't have the M9, but it says my M9 bullets are full. That's good.
I mean, hell, the bodies even disappear after you kill them, and there's no durability on items like the suppressor either. And once that idea settles in, a lot of the tense vibes you're supposed to get from sneaking around are pretty much non-existent. And even as a shooter, there really isn't much here either, as the shooting feels very flimsy and you auto-lock on to everything anyway. That said, I do kind of feel like the game wants to be a bit more hokey and James Bondy rather than serious and stealthy. I mean, the name already alludes to this, but the game kinda is a love letter to spy movies. So there's tons of references to Mission Impossible, James Bond, and tons of others. Also, if you found yourself wondering why Billy's description had information regarding his views on cross-dressing, it's because the game's mechanic is a disguise system, and the fact that only Sheila has the ability to disguise herself as both male and female characters. Now, I get that Billy might have a hard time adjusting to a skin-tight dress, but when you play as Sheila, she still has that strut when walking around. So, yeah, I'm not sure if Billy dressing as a woman really would have made a difference. Anyway, what you do is take pictures of the NPCs around you. These could be guards, soldiers, or just regular civilians. And once you have a picture of someone, you can turn into that person. If all of this sounds stupid to you, it's because it is. But it did make the game a lot more fun to play through than it would have been otherwise. Thing is, it kinda turns the game into this hokey adventure game rather than a serious stealth action game. So instead of fighting a cyborg ninja, you dress up as a stripper to gather intel. Or instead of disguising yourself as a scientist to infiltrate a laboratory, you disguise yourself as a scientist to infiltrate a laboratory. And like I said, the game's actual stealth mechanics suck a big fat dick, so the fact that about 80% of this game revolves around disguising and eavesdropping makes up for a lot. Really, apart from the first stage and a rather short section set in the jungle, most of the game just involves you acquiring disguises and listening to the silly dialogue. And the fun doesn't stop there, because you also get a shit ton of James Bond-esque gadgets, which are completely useless because of how OP the gun is. Anyway, it's a very simple game and it's not incredibly well made either. But it's pretty fun for what it is. Also, it's very forgiving and not really challenging at all. Yet I still found myself to be highly entertained by it. I mean, the gameplay has this arcadey charm about it, which is totally one of my deeply perverted fetishes. Add that to some pretty hilarious writing with corny as all hell voice acting, and you end up with a game that's fun enough to try should you ever find it in a bargain bin for like $5 or something. So yeah.
Goodbye, bitches.